Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I am Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers. And Jack, we suspected that going into 2026, the Diamondbacks might want to come down payroll-wise from where they were in 2025, of course, setting a franchise record. And to start things off on this episode, we figured we would dive into that a little bit. We got a report from Nick Picoro just a few days ago, Jack, and it appears to indicate that our suspicions are true, that the Diamondbacks will cut payroll heading into 2026.
Correct. And, a few caveats I just want to start off with real quick. Number one, ownership and Kendrick should be commended for, basically setting franchise record payrolls 2 years in a row, coming off the World Series run and an attendance bump. I mean, there's no doubt that they, reinvested that money back into the team's payroll. So absolutely kudos to them. It's not a shock that they're going to have to roll back a little bit. We don't know exactly how much. Okay, so that's another important point. Derrick Hall is very clear that they don't need to be and don't expect to be at the same level that they were this year, which they claimed was around 195. Public resources that add up all the money comes out closer to like 187. So, but the team themselves have said it was really closer to 195. So, it's not a shock that it's coming down, and it's not a criticism that we're reporting this.
Sure.
This is just, relevant facts. And so I just want to start with that and make sure that this doesn't come off as like we're ripping on the team for slashing payroll and being misers. There's none of that going on here, but there are certain realities when we crunch the numbers that we come up against. And so those are the things I wanted to highlight, which I did in an article I wrote yesterday.
Yeah, Nick had some initial reporting on this, and then Jack, as he often does, dove into all of the numbers and did a really good job breaking it down for everyone. Jack, let's go ahead and jump in. I guess the $1 million question here is, how much are the Diamondbacks going to spend next season? That's not really a question we can answer at this point. Derrick Hall did not answer that in his interview with Nick Picoro. However, we do have a sense of where the payroll would stand right now heading into 2026.
Right. So what's on the screen right now are what represents essentially, as of right now, this snapshot minimum commitments. And there's a few areas of this that is broken down by. So there's guaranteed contracts, which is showing 102.8 or just 103 million. Depending on the site that you go to, and there's numerous resources, you might come up a couple million higher or a couple million lower, depending on which site you're using. Just for the record, I've continually used all three major sites, including COTS, baseball contracts on Baseball Prospectus. I've used Spot Track, and I've used Roster Resource, and they're all great. They all have great information, but sometimes they're not exactly the same. So some reconciliation work is done, and in areas where I'm not clear, I ask people in the know to try to get some clarification. How people handle signing bonuses and things like that. There's a lot of nuance to it. Then the second piece of that graphic was arbitration, which is 27.2 million. So there are a group of players that are arbitration eligible. And we know that arbitration salaries escalate, and we can estimate approximately what those are going to be based on past history. So I estimated 27.2 million. That could be off by 10% in either direction. They could be as low as 25. They could be as high as 29. And that represents a figure without them non-tendering any of those arbitration eligible players, which they might do. And we'll kind of touch on some of those things later. Then there's two other pieces to this, pre-arb players. So when you look at the guaranteed contracts and you look at the arbitration eligible players, you come up with about 17 names, and you have to fill out the rest of the roster, right? So those roster spots, the minimum that they could be filled at is what? League minimum. And so that comes out to about 8 million. And just kind of rethinking this, I actually underestimated that by a couple of million probably, because we know for a fact heading in that Corbin Burns and Justin Martinez and AJ Puck are not going to be available. So that's 3 more spots that I really should have added. So that pre-arb number could be 10 million. And then the other represents what they have to pay 40-man roster players that are in the minor leagues. They still get more than the minor league minimum. And that's, $1 million or $2 million. And then other injury replacements. So whenever a player that's on the major league roster goes on to the IL, a minor league player at league minimum is the lowest cost that they could replace that player with. And they're prorated according to how many days they spend on the roster. So I can tell you from experience that when front offices are looking at what they are going to need to spend, they include an amount. It could vary, but I put in several $1 million minimum of minor league players to come up and replace injured players. Now, that number would have been higher for the Diamondbacks this year. So this is the baseline that the Diamondbacks are starting from. Now, people have questions about, well, they have $75 million off the books, free agents. Yes, those numbers are removed. Those players are not included in the guaranteed contracts. So it doesn't really matter when we're looking at what's their minimum commitment right now, what came off the books. What matters is what everything adds up to at the moment. And everything adds up to, give or take, $140, $145 million, somewhere in that range. So then the question becomes, as I said, Derrick Hall very clearly stated that the payroll is going to be lower, but he didn't say by how much. So all we can do is guess and speculate, right? I mean, if it was 195, does lower mean 10 million lower, 20 million lower, 30 million lower? We don't know. For my article, just so that I could attach some kind of idea, I put 175 million as okay, just as an example. If they come down to 175 million and they're committed to 145, then they have roughly $30 million to spend. If they go ahead and slash some of the arbitration costs by non-tendering guys, they could conceivably save another $10 million, and that 30 million could become 40 million. Now, again, I got to circle back to one other point, and then I'll kick it back to you, Jesse. A lot has been made about, they saved $17 million, and the team is committed to reinvest that money into the payroll. Yes, that's fine. So really all that's telling me is that they'll be reducing payroll less than they otherwise would have. Again, we go back, what's their baseline? What are they committed to? They're committed to the guaranteed salaries, what they know they're going to probably have to pay in arbitration, what they're going to have to pay league minimum players minimum to fill out the remaining roster spots, and budgeting a little bit of money for the 40-man roster and injuries. That's 145 million. That's it. So if they didn't save that 17 million, maybe they would have had to reduce payroll an additional, 10 or 20 million dollars on top of whatever number they're going to land at. So, all this, they've got $17 million more to spend. Yes, but it just means that they're reducing the payroll less than they otherwise would have.
Just to get some of Derrick Hall's actual words in here, this is from Nick's story that I referenced earlier. Hall, with regard to the payroll going into next season, he said, "We had those conversations. The money we saved, we can reinvest into the product for next year. We're going to have to, because we're still going to have so many guys on the IL. We're going to have to do some work on the roster." Then he continued, "Do I think we need to have the payroll number where it was this year? Probably not. But I think we can have just as good a team that we constructed by reinvesting the money that we saved and then some." So the implication is the D-backs are going to reinvest that $17 million approximately that they saved at the trade deadline, and then spend some money beyond that. According to your calculations, it certainly looks like there would be room to add, given all of the numbers that are coming off the books this winter. But yeah, on the whole, Jack, this doesn't appear to be a team that is about to spend $60 or $70 million in free agency. I just don't really see that happening, and it'll be interesting to see how Mike Hazen pivots, because I think he probably has $60, $70 million worth of holes to fill. If he was to try to go out and get a frontline starting pitcher, if he was to try to go out and find, good options at first base and third base that you really feel like you could rely on, I mean, they could run these numbers up pretty quick, but it doesn't sound like that's what they're going to do. So we're going to take a quick ad break here, but we'll come back. We'll talk more payroll, the implications for 2026, maybe dive a little bit deeper into some of those arbitration numbers and maybe a few players that the Diamondbacks could non-tender this offseason to save some money. We'll do all of that on the other side of this break.
AJ, I'm on my phone right now in Arena Club, and I'm looking at the Emerald slab packs, and I see in the Grail a Bobby Witt Jr. 2020 Bowman Chrome Prospect Auto Gold Refractor card.
Give me that. Give me your phone. I'm gonna get you to
you gotta buy
that to me.
I don't have it.
I thought you had it.
Get a slab pack. No, I don't have that.
Then give me your slab pack.
That card's worth.
You buy me slab pack, Scott, so I can get the Bobby Witt Jr. Gold Refractor 2020 Bowman Chrome Auto, because that sounds awesome.
And it's worth a lot.
It's worth a lot. He's a stud. He's not going down. Get a Grail. Get a Grail. I want a Grail, Scott. Give me the Holy Grail. You do it.
To do that, you must get yourself a slab pack in Arena Club. Or if you want to get it for a friend, you can do that too. And right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or your first card purchase. If you're going on there and you're just like, hey, I want a specific card. I find it there. I want to grab it for my showroom. arenaclub.com/foul and use the code FOUL.
Well, Jack, in terms of what this means for the team going into next season, I don't think it necessarily dooms them. I don't think it means the 2026 Diamondback season is over before it has even begun. There's still a lot that this team could do to try to improve going into next season. There are some players internally that could improve to maybe improve the outlook for next year. But the thing that comes to mind more than anything, Jack, is that Mike Hazen really might have to lean into trades this winter in a way that maybe he hasn't had to in recent years.
I agree with that 100%. And we've kind of been telegraphing that, and so has he, really, in some of his comments. It's very clear that they have somewhat of a glut of position player prospects versus pitching prospects, although they just added, 8 to their top 30 pipeline. We don't know where those guys are going to fall in, but the bottom line is they still have more top-level hitting talent coming up through the system than they do pitching. And so, it stands to reason that 1 or 2 guys are going to be removed from that list as part of some kind of deal to increase pitching. We know that, of course, they're giving Tyler Locklear a run at first base and to see what he can do and whether or not he can be a player that would man the position next year. Pavin Smith's coming back, and he's going to play plenty of first base too. We'll get to the injury updates, but he'll be back and probably get in another close to 6 weeks worth of play, or at least 5, to see where he's at. And then, of course, you have Jordan Lawlar potentially at third base and Blaze Alexander, who we're going to talk about later too. So if any of these players can step up and say, man, those corner positions, then that gives the team a little bit more flexibility, right? They won't have to spend as much to fill those slots. But that's going to be a tough evaluation. I mean, we're going to be dealing with small sample sizes of young players sharing time, trying to figure out the game at this level. And those are not going to be easy evaluations. I mean, it's a risky thing to say, okay, I'm going to watch Jordan Lawlar and say he has a good month of September. Okay, he's ready. Let's go. He's my third baseman. And Tyler Locklear, well, he's kind of started off slumping here, but he came on strong over the last 2 weeks of the year. I'm just hypothetically, does that give you enough confidence to say that's my first baseman? So it's going to be difficult to make those evaluations. That's why they get paid the big bucks.
Going back to some of the arbitration numbers that you mentioned, there was a total there of $27.2 million approximately for ARB-eligible players. But, Jack, it's not necessarily a given that the Diamondbacks will actually tender contracts to all of these guys. What names stand out to you here of players that they could maybe save a few $1 million on going into next year?
Well, I mean, you have to look at Ryan Thompson and Kevin Ginkel because they're the most expensive guys, and they both had well below average seasons. Kevin, which we're going to get to, is obviously missing the rest of the season with his shoulder sprain. Ryan Thompson still doesn't seem super close to returning. And so that's over $8 million, $8.5 million between those two guys that they're expected to receive in their final years of arbitration. Pavin Smith, it's kind of hard for me to imagine that they would non-tender him. He's going to be estimated to make about $3 million in ARB2, could be a little more. I'm not sure. And then a little further down, you have Jake McCarthy at $2.1 million in his first year of arbitration is the estimate. Maybe that's 10% too high. I'm not really sure. Same with Jose Herrera, $1.9 million. So that's $4 million more between those two players. So, these are all bubble guys when it comes to tendering. I'm not projecting and I'm not saying that any of them definitely will be non-tendered, and I'm not calling for it. That's for the team to decide. But just analyzing it amongst that list, those are the guys that you would look at and say, all right, there's a decision to be made here. The rest of the guys on the list, there's no decision to be made. They will be tendered.
Yeah, I think it is, Pavin Smith seems like I think the D-backs are almost certainly going to tender him just because first base is a pretty big area of need going into next season. Obviously, there's Tyler Locklear, as you referenced earlier, but I think the D-backs would love to have another option that they felt okay about at that position. The relievers are interesting, Jack. I mean, Kevin Ginkel has an ERA over 7. I mean, that definitely kind of screams non-tender candidate. But at the same time, he's looked a little bit more like himself in recent days. But on the other hand, he's gonna miss the rest of the season. He now has a shoulder strain, and we expect him to miss the remainder of the season. So you're not gonna get any more looks at Kevin Ginkel the rest of the way. That's a tricky one. Ryan Thompson, I think we're still gonna see again this year. So the D-backs will have more ability, more time to evaluate him down the stretch, which I think will be valuable. But Kevin Ginkel, Jack, I mean, that is a tough one. He's one of the more expensive names on the list here at just under $4 million, approximately. That's just a guess. Yeah, I mean, he's been a really big part of this bullpen for a number of years. To non-tender him, that would be a pretty big move.
Yeah, it would. And, I mean, Ryan Thompson's even more expensive on that list, right? Because this is his fourth time at arbitration. So, it's his ERA wasn't very low either for the year, and he, has been very inconsistent. So I think both of them are really on that bubble. But the question is, can you get better options for, less money? Whether, for example, Kendall Graveman is a type of player that you're going to be able to sign for that kind of money. I mean, you if you want to sign a free agent reliever, it's still going to cost you $3 or $4 million just to get kind of like a buy low, see if he gets better from injury type of guy. So that's the flip side of it. I mean, how good a pitcher are you going to be able to get? That goes back to the evaluation. They have a lot of young relievers. If 2 or 3 of them came up of, we have Andrew Hoffman here now. If one of Brandon Garcia or Hayden Dirk or Juan Burgos, somebody like that came up, or Juan Murillo comes back up and actually throws some strikes. If any of these guys can do that, that also maybe gives them the confidence to say, you know what, I don't need to go out and sign the next Kendall Graveman to replace Kevin Ginkel. I'll go with the young guys. Kind of hard to see them doing that. If they expect to compete next year, they're going to have to invest more resources than they have traditionally in the bullpen. That's my opinion. They may not see it that way. They never have. Right? I mean, the most money they've spent on a bullpen was Paul Sewald.
Yeah, right. Which is crazy. That and the Mark Melancon contract, right, for 2 years and $14 million or whatever it was. It's crazy. I still think, even though the numbers for 2025 for someone like Kevin Ginkel are what they are, I still think that a 1-year, $4 million contract for him is pretty reasonable. Like, if I were one of the other teams in the league and I had Kevin Ginkel out there as a free agent and I could sign him for 1 year and $3 or $4 million, I think I'd probably be pretty happy with that because this is a guy who does have a history of being a back end reliever, and the stuff did drop off this season, but not all that significantly. There's, a couple ticks down on the slider, a little bit on the fastball as well. But this is a guy who's still been able to perform at a pretty high level with his velocity in this range. So my guess is the D-backs will tender contracts to both of those guys, but I really don't know. I could see that going either way. The other thing I'll say about this payroll conversation real quick, Jack, is I think that we've been a little surprised in this regard each of the last two off seasons, especially last off season when the team came out of nowhere and decided to sign Corbin Burnes to a 6-year, $210 million contract. Ken Kendrick, to his credit, has been willing to push the envelope beyond what we initially thought, really in each of the last two off seasons, I would say. So because of that, I wouldn't take these numbers that we're talking about now as gospel, the $30 million that they have to spend or whatever we kind of estimate it could be right now. At the end of the day, Ken Kendrick has kind of come out of nowhere and surprised us a lot recently.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Just going back, I mean, in Nick's article, the other comment that he made, Nick wrote himself, Hall expects payroll to come down from this year's level, though he did not offer a specific number. And Nick goes on to echo what you just said, which is, they've surprised us and they've been unpredictable in how they handle things. So it's, a lot of times I think it depends on what opportunities present themselves. I wanted to add one other thing. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. has an opt-out. All right. Now, there's a possibility he could opt out of his deal next year. He's among the guaranteed contracts of it's $13 million. Now, there's a $5 million option on him later, and I don't know if that option gets triggered if he himself opts out. I saw one website list him as being owed $18 million, and I thought that was a little strange. I couldn't figure out why they had $18 million, and then I realized for the following year, 27, the team has a $14 million team club option with a $5 million buyout. And sometimes these contracts are a little weird, and I'm wondering if he opts out, if that $5 million is triggered. And that's why that other website put 18 million. It's something I kind of want to dig into and find out about. But that's an interesting scenario. I mean, if Lourdes is guaranteed 5 million, if he opts out, that means he only has to clear 8 million plus 14 next year, 22 million over 2 years. If he gets in excess of that, then his dollar value would be higher. So, he hasn't had a very good year, and I think a lot of people have just assumed, well, why would he opt out? He hasn't played well. But it doesn't take much these days for, a player that can hit for 100 OPS plus on a fairly regular basis to clear 10, 12 million average annual. So we'll see. Just kind of an interesting little wrinkle there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kotz has the $5 million buyout attached to the 2027 club option that you referenced at $14 million. I would think that because it's an opt-out and not an option technically, that there isn't a buyout attached to his number for next year. If he opts out, he's just opting out. But again, do we expect Lourdes Gurriel to opt out, Jack? Because I think I'm pretty confident he would opt back in.
Yeah, I'm not sure. One thing I do know for sure, though, is that if it's, for example, on mutual options, if it's the player that declines the option, the option buyout still must be paid by the club. Mike Hazen confirmed that to me.
Yeah, the buyouts, they gonna get paid no matter what, but an opt-out is, I guess, a little different than having a player club option. So maybe we can get some firm clarity on that here at some point. With that, we're gonna transition to talking about some actual baseball games that have been played recently. And a certain member of this Diamondbacks team has had a really good month of August, and we are going to talk about him in our DraftKings Player Spotlight. And I have disappeared from the screen, which is amazing. There we go. So, Jack, Blaze Alexander has been playing really, really well lately for this Diamondbacks team. We saw him come through with another big hit in the game on Friday. And this is a player who, as we referenced earlier, could be a factor for the team in 2026, potentially in a pretty big way.
Yeah, it's really nice to see him doing so well. I mean, regardless of what else happens and what happens with Jordan Lawlar, I think everybody loves Blaze. I mean, he's just a fun guy. He's always upbeat, easy to talk to, has something funny to say. A lot of self-deprecating humor with him as well. And so, it's just the type of guy that makes it easy to root for him. And so when he has success, it's a feel-good story. And surely he's having some success right now. I mean, he's hitting well. He's having good at-bats. Beyond hitting the big 3-run double last night and then an opposite field home run, he drove in the first 4 runs of the game. He's been having good at bats. I remember talking to him in the clubhouse, about 10 days ago, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to get a walk tonight. He ended up getting hit by a pitch. And then, since then, he's had some longer at bats and he's taken a few walks. And, it's paying off. And now that he's getting pitches to hit, his approach has been much better at the plate. And then defensively, I mean, I think I've seen one error. He's just looked really good. His footwork looks good. As Tori said, he's got the glove out in front of him. He's not. Oh, when you have such a strong arm, sometimes you kind of tend to get a little over-reliant on the fact that you have a strong arm, and some of the fundamentals suffer a little bit. But, he's now got all that dialed in. Another key thing for Blaze, I think we talked about this once before, is when he had the oblique strain, when he healed up from that at the end of March, he didn't get to go and play in extended spring training camp games. They just sent him right out to Reno. And then boom, he was right in the middle of games. And, he's not complaining about it, but he mentioned it was like that was pretty tough for him. And he made some pretty rough, bad errors right there at the very beginning. But they really clamped down on everything. And he worked very, very closely with one of the assistant coaches, Sean Roof. And then he got, worked with all the infield coaches there and got things dialed in. And he came back ready to play, and it's evident. He's looking really good at third base.
His WRC plus, Jack, is now up over 100 at 106. It feels like that number has just shot up here in the month of August. His ground ball rate has also really plummeted. I know that's something that you and I have been watching with Blaze really ever since he entered the big leagues. He's generally run fairly high ground ball rates down in AAA. That ground ball rate was almost 70%, Jack, if I'm remembering correctly, about a week or two ago. And now it's 54.9%, which is still on the higher end, still a little bit higher than you would ideally want it to be. But it's at least a lot more reasonable than where it was before. You're starting to see him make a lot more hard contact as well. His barrel rate is actually well above the league average at this point. Of course, he had the home run and the double in the game on Friday, 4 RBIs altogether. And I think going into 2026, Jack, I feel like Blaze is, I don't want to jump the gun here, but I feel like he's almost already earned a roster spot next season as a utility type player. I mean, that just feels like it would make a whole lot of sense for this team.
Absolutely. I mean, he can play second, he can play short, he can play third. This isn't about saying that he's going to take over third base and beat out Jordan Lawlar. I mean, the team's most desired outcome is absolutely going to be Jordan Lawlar taking over third base and playing well enough to earn that. But in the meantime, Blaze can only do what he can do with the playing time he's given. And as you said, he's really making a very strong case for an opening day roster spot, to be that primary utility infielder. And if he plays like this around all 3 infield positions and can give you close to league average hitting, anything over 90 something OPS plus or WRC plus from a utility player that plays 3 positions and gets, 300 at-bats in a season, that's really valuable to a club, right? Because now you're putting out a guy that's a little above replacement level value when you have to sit Ketel Marte or Geraldo Perdomo or whoever's playing third base. As opposed to how many times you see a guy, run out there with a 60, 70 OPS plus and just mediocre defense. I mean, that hurts a team to put a below replacement level player in that spot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember when we had our good friend Jesse Borick on the show recently. He said that every good team needs a player like Blaze Alexander, and Blaze playing at his best, certainly a valuable member of a baseball team. Well, if you've never bet on baseball before, it is simple with our friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Pick a guy to go yard, hammer some live odds mid-game, or just ride with your squad and hope for the best. And Jack, I know you have a thought about what people might be able to take advantage of over at the DraftKings Sportsbook app. This is an interesting one for this week.
Yeah, I like the Padres to sneak in and take the NL West. Now, of course, I was working on this last night, and they got blown out by the Red Sox 10-2, and the odds changed quite a bit. They went from plus 320 to plus 475, but I really like the Padres and what they did at the deadline, as did everybody else in the industry. I mean, they bolstered their offense in a big way with some really good hitters. I mean, Freddie Fermin, catcher, and Ramon Laureano in the outfield, and Ryan O'Hearn at DH. I mean, they really brought in some good players on offense. And then they added Mason Miller to the best bullpen in the league. So I think that they're in a really good spot. One thing I was noticing, the Dodgers by far have thrown the most bullpen innings at 498.
Mm.
The Padres are in the middle of the pack, like 12th with 421. And, that extra workload on their relievers continues to be a drain on the Dodgers. And so they're very deep. They obviously, there's no question about that. They invested so much money in it, but I just think that it's going to be really tough to get through the next 5-6 weeks and finish out the season strong for the Dodgers bullpen. And so I like a plus 475 number for the Padres to run the Dodgers down. They're 3 games back, exactly 3 in a loss column. They have six more games head to head. Both teams have kind of a soft schedule. They both have 7 games against the Rockies left. They both have the Orioles on the schedule. There's a lot of soft games. The White Sox are in there. So there's a lot of soft games for both of them. Both teams are rated as having some of the easiest remaining schedules. So they'll probably both be running up their win totals. But for me, as you guys may have noticed by now, I kind of like the long shots a little bit. I like to get on that side of things. On my prior calls on Gino, maybe not looking so good, but the call on the Diamondbacks under on the 1 loss is looking pretty accurate. So we'll see how we go on the next one. I'd lock this in at 475.
Yeah, Padres to win NL West plus 475. You can do that right now over at the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Well, Jack, Zac Gallen continues to be a member of the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he's turned in 2 pretty good outings since the trade deadline. He was pretty good against the Sacramento A's, tossing 6 innings of 2-run ball there, and then it was 6 innings and 1 run for him against the Rockies on Friday. Granted, not the most prolific offense in the league, and this game was not at Coors Field, which certainly helps. However, Gallen looked good, Jack, and we certainly like to see this guy succeed, and he took a bit of a different approach in this game. He threw a whole bunch of changeups, and he threw some sinkers in this one as well.
Right. And the interesting thing here was they made an in-game adjustment. It's funny. Like I asked Zach, did you have a different approach in this game? Kind of alluding to like what happened prior against the Rockies. Now he had a rough start in Coors. He also had a rough start in Chase against the Rockies as well. So, it's a little he kind of left out the rough start and Chase against the Rockies when he answered my question. But the main thing is they made an in-game adjustment because they saw that they were getting a lot of soft contact off the sinker. And then Zach said that the changeup he feels tunnels well or better off the changeup. So that combination is why because I thought it was strange, like, why are you throwing so many changeups with only one left-handed batter in the lineup?
Sure.
So that was the reason that he gave, because it tunnels better off the sinker. So that was the impetus for that, and that was an in-game adjustment. That was like after the first inning or two, McCann, and went to him and said, "Hey, let's go with the sinker here," and so that then begat the additional changeups.
And yeah, we're starting to see more of those sinkers, Jack. It really has not been a pitch for Gallen hardly at all throughout his major league career. He's been very four-seam fastball heavy. Of course, he also has the cutter as a fastball option to work off of that. But this, to me, Jack, felt almost inevitable that at a certain point, as Gallen's four-seamer just continued to not perform the way that he has wanted it to for multiple years at this point, it is kind of a natural pivot to try throwing a sinker more and just see what the results are. Sinkers generally are not going to get you as much swing and miss as four-seam fastballs could, but Gallen also hasn't gotten much four-seam fastball swing and miss anyway here recently. So I guess it made sense that this was the pivot for him. The movement profile is nothing crazy. It actually, from a vertical movement standpoint, it's only a few inches off of his four-seam fastball, so it doesn't have a ton of drop. But it does have about 5 or 6 more inches of horizontal movement than the four-seamer, at least assuming that Baseball Savant is doing a good enough job of distinguishing the two pitches. Again, they're fairly close, so I wouldn't be shocked if Baseball Savant is making some mistakes there. But it's interesting, Jack, to see someone like Zac Gallen, who we know is one of the foremost tinkerers in this game and certainly willing to try new things. It's taken him a while to come around to the sinker, but he threw that pitch, I think, third most among all of his weapons in that game on Friday.
Correct. Yeah. And, look, I mean, as far as what it means, I mean, you want Zach to pitch well. I think that in his case, it's too late to help the Diamondbacks as far as the trade deadline is concerned, but they still want to win games and they still want to be above water as much as possible. And I think that being in a positive winning situation is better for the development of the younger players around him that are trying to get their footing, as opposed to having the starter go out and get blown off the mound. They're just going to have more opportunities to shine in bigger moments to help win ball games. So it's all part of building a better situation for next year. And as far as it goes back to the repeated questions, Zac Gallen, qualifying offer,
Yes.
Does he accept it? If he does accept it, is that a problem for the Diamondbacks? We just went over the financial numbers. I mean, if they have maximum $30 to $40 million to play with, if Zach takes a qualifying offer at 22, well, that's a big chunk right there, So the very interesting dynamics are going to take place here. I still think that he declines the qualifying offer just because of who his agent is and his overall self-confidence level. He has not lost his confidence, but he knows he took full accountability, by the way. He just has said repeatedly, look, I let the team down. The way I pitched, helped force them into the sell situation. I let myself down, I let the team down by that, and put the team in this position. So he's fully aware of that, and he's voiced that opinion. Kudos to Zach. He's not making excuses. All you can do is one foot in front of the other and move forward. He seems to be doing that, so that's great to see.
Yeah, it could have implications, right, for what it looks like in the offseason, how Gallen pitches the rest of the season. If he continues to rattle off some of these pretty solid outings, then you feel especially confident that you can give Gallen the qualifying offer and he will not accept it, and he'll go get paid by a team that likes what they saw from him in the second half of the season. Jack, to finish things out here, I know we have some injury updates, which some players that we haven't seen in quite some time. Gabriel Moreno, of course, has been out since basically the beginning of June. We think that he could get back here pretty soon, and Jordan Lawlar here as well.
Yeah, so Gabby, he's swinging the bat, running bases, catching live sessions. He's going to probably be in Reno by the middle of next week on rehab assignment, according to Torrey. So figure Tuesday, Wednesday, he should be up there, and I would expect him to need to play at least 2, maybe 3 games before he comes back. Torrey said that a realistic target for his actual return to Major League games will be the next homestand that starts on the 18th and ends on the 24th. So that's your window for return for Gabriel Moreno if there's no setbacks or issues. 8/18 at the earliest, and 8/22, 23 at the latest. That's when you should be expecting Gabriel Moreno's return. Jordan Lawlar played in a continuation camp game on Thursday. And from what I heard through the grapevine, he even hit a home run and kind of pimped the home run a little bit, just, having some fun with it. And that got, I guess the scout report on that was got quite a chuckle. So I think Jordan is going to be heading up to Reno as well around the same time, middle of next week. And then he's going to need some run time there. He's going to have to play some games. I think the key thing here is that Torrey and Mike have both said nothing's going to just be handed to him. I mean, he's going to have to play well and hit well and kind of establish a solid footing. It's not like, he gets healthy, he goes to Reno, plays 2 games, and there's an automatic lock to get back to the Major League club. At least that's what they're saying now. So it'll be interesting to watch what kind of at-bats he's having and how he performs in his first handful of games back in Reno. I don't think they'll wait too long. It still could be before September 1st, but no later than September 1st for Jordan Lawlar to come back up is what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, Lawlar's it's an interesting situation because the Diamondbacks optioned him on May 29th. And I mean, how many minor league games has Jordan Lawlar actually been able to play since that happened? I'm looking at his game log right now. He was healthy for a good portion of June. So maybe a month's worth of games, talking maybe about 20 games or so. This was a player that when the Diamondbacks sent him down in May, it was pretty clear that he wasn't quite ready for the majors yet. And granted, part of that could just be that they put him in a really tough spot where he wasn't getting playing time every day. We talked about that at length back at the time. So maybe we didn't get a totally fair picture of what Jordan Lawlar's abilities were. But yeah, it does seem like this is a player that you ideally would like to find his footing in AAA a little bit more before you give him another shot in the big leagues. I just think, Jack, about what it would be like if Lawlar comes back and kind of looks the same as he did earlier in the season and toward the end of 2023, and then you're kind of just left wondering, going into 2026, like, have we just totally shot this guy's confidence when he's struggled to this degree in the big leagues? You can understand why the team is being a little cautious here. Why they're like, we want him to earn it. We want him to find his footing in AAA. Maybe they're just kind of saying those things to say those things. It's still not going to surprise me if we see Lawlar in the big leagues sooner than later, just because of the opportunities that have now opened up. But it's tricky, Jack. This is going to be really interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I think you touched on probably the most important thing is they don't want to shoot his confidence.
Yeah.
Right? Look, Jordan Lawlar is a very strong-minded guy, and he's very smart, and he's very well prepared. And a very confident but not overly cocky guy. Another tremendous human being. You talk about makeup and character. He's that guy. There's no question about it. Unfortunately, the major league portion of his performance and ability to stay healthy have not matched that. But he's human. And, he's 4 for 50 in his major league career and hitless this year. So, yeah, if they rush him up here after just a few games before he's on solid footing and he goes 3 for 41, that's going to be a real problem for not only, like you said, the team's valuation, but his confidence. So
yeah.
I hope that they're cautious here and really get him on some solid ground before they pull him back up.
Well, we will see how that plays out. Certainly would be fun to have Lawlar back in the majors. Give us all something else to tune into on a nightly basis that will pique our curiosity. We'll see how all of that plays out. But that is everything that we have on this edition of Snakes Territory. Although, Jack, is there something you wanted to add real quick?
Yeah, just real quickly. I did want to update one thing on Kevin Ginkel. So his
Sure.
second opinion from Dr. Meister did come back. It confirmed that it was a shoulder sprain. No surgery required, but he was shut down from throwing for 6 weeks and had already been put on the 60-day IL as
Right.
of August 3rd. So we knew that he was out for the rest of the season, but he's not even going to be throwing for 6 weeks. So, his season is over. He'll, rehab and probably do some throwing program at the end of the season or early fall, or they just may have him stay shut down until, whenever, November, December. But that's it for Kevin Ginkel. I mean, his season's over.
Do you have anything new on Ryan Thompson while we're on the topic? We do
Yes.
expect to see Thompson back this year, right?
Yeah, so he threw what they call a short box bullpen. 15 pitches. Short box is when the catcher actually steps out in front of home plate. So that means that he's still got a ways to go. I mean, full bullpens and live sessions. I would say that Ryan Thompson's probably at least a couple more weeks away, just based
Okay.
on the build-up period that he needs.
Well, as we talked about earlier, seeing Ryan Thompson in the majors for the last month or so could be really helpful for the Diamondbacks in making those arbitration decisions, as we were discussing earlier. And also, just be good to see Ryan back with the big league team. He's certainly an important guy in that Diamondbacks clubhouse. But that is everything that we have for this episode of Snakes Territory. We really appreciate all of you tuning in. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you're joining us here on YouTube. It helps us out a lot. If you're joining us over on an audio-only platform, we'd really appreciate it if you would leave us a rating and review. That also really helps out the show. Drop a comment if you're joining us here on YouTube. We always love to hear from you, or you can find us over on social media as well. I am at Jesse N. Friedman on Twitter. Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. Jack does a great job covering the Diamondbacks over on si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. You can read the story we referenced earlier on the payroll and diving into all of those numbers over there, as well as articles covering all of the other things you might want to know about this 2025 Diamondbacks team. Well, thank you again for being with us. We really appreciate your time, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.